Jack is a great guy. He's written a fantastic book. Everybody's talking about it. Go get it. And he's been my friend right from the beginning of this whole beautiful event. And we're going to turn it around and make our country great again. Amen.
The wages for blue-collar workers are now rising at the fastest rate in 60 years, which is so important to all of us around this table. The average American worker has already seen a $500 wage increase this year, and there's no inflation because there's been decreases, tremendous decreases with thanks to Doug and Chris and some of the people, the great job they've done with energy. Thank you very much. And Chris, thank you very much. I see you down close to $60 a barrel, and you'll be breaking that pretty soon. And that has a huge impact. So we have groceries are down. Energy is way down. Energy is way down. It was $4 and $5 for a gallon of gas. Think of that for gasoline. And now it's probably $2.25. There are some places it's $2. It broke $2 at a couple of locations in the South. In places like California where they charge such high taxes, it's higher, but it's still much lower than what it was a year ago. So energy's way down. Groceries are way down. Eggs are way down. Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. You've done a great job. Appreciate it. When we came in, the eggs were through the roof. They were 4 times higher than they've ever been.
All right, folks, Human Events Daily. We're back here live on the South Lawn of the White House, and we're very honored to have now on our show the Director of the National Economic Council. We got the Director of National Intelligence later, folks. We'll have her on later. National Economic Council, Kevin Hassett, is here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you.
So I need to, you have to explain something to me. I'm very confused, obviously, because the media told me that by this point in President Trump's term, that his policies would be destroying our stock market, inflation would be through the roof, the price of eggs, the price of everything would be absolutely crazy, and that people would be basically priced out of house and home. Yet, I'm looking around, the sky doesn't seem to have fallen yet. How is that possible?
Right, it's possible because President Trump was right all along that we could raise revenue with tariffs, and a lot of the cost of the tariff is going to be borne by the foreigners who are exporting stuff to the U.S. And so if you think about it, China is maintaining political stability by giving jobs to people and dumping products into the U.S. And if they were to cut back, then they would have people lose their jobs and then maybe have political instability. So they're bearing most of the tariff. And so we got big tariff revenues, but we don't see inflation at all. In fact, inflation has been decelerating. It's about half where it was about 6 months ago.
All right, so let's think about that. Inflation has now been cut in half since President Trump took office, yet we were told that the tariffs themselves would be inflationary. What was wrong with the thinking of, I'm not going to use the word panicking, oh, I just did, but what was wrong with the logic of that?
Right. Well, I actually like to run through a simple example. Suppose that you're buying an apple for $1, and then we put a 10-cent tax on it. Let's just say tax. Then when you go to the store, then something's going to happen to the price. If the price of the apple goes to $1.10, then you, the consumer, are going to have to pay the whole 10 cents. If the price is $1, then the business pays the whole 10 cents. And it could go somewhere in between, but it's got to be between $1 and $1.10. And what happens is that if there's an inelastically supplied thing, so that people just have to sell it, then like the apple will spoil if you don't sell it. Right. Then what happens is that the store ends up bearing the tax. And so if we've had a trade deficit, say with China forever and ever, then by definition their supply is inelastic, and so therefore they should be like the store example. They should bear a lot of the tariff.
That's a great way to put that. So I used to work briefly at the China American Chamber of Commerce over there, and spent 2 years total living and working in China, studying a little bit as well. And it's very clear that this is entirely how their economy is set up. So when you talk about the jobs and the direct correlation between work and in many cases, make work in China, as well as instability, this is exactly right. This is what the CCP leaders, whether it's, even if it wasn't Xi Jinping, whichever, and perhaps will be there for the rest of our natural lives, who knows? But, even prior to him, though, when it was Hu Jintao, when it was others, the very first thing they wake up thinking of is my country unstable, and will the loss of jobs lead to that instability? This, of course, was one of their biggest drivers in COVID, because they had to reopen, they had to get back to work, and it was one of the toughest the toughest challenges that they were facing, because there was a moment during COVID where the apple cart would have been turned over, to use to carry the analogy forward. But so that being said, if they're not exporting because their entire economy is centered around exports, if those exports aren't chugging out, then that means their production down. If they're slashing production, that means those people are going to be eventually slashing jobs. That'll be the downstream effect. And guess what? The all the way downstream effect will be this instability. So it actually makes sense, because we know that they've been playing these currency games already with the renminbi, with the Chinese yuan, that they have to keep the exports up no matter what.
They do, and that's why we see that we're not seeing runaway inflation, and we're raising, maybe it looks like now we're going to have $3 trillion in tariff revenue over the next 10 years from these great tariffs.
I suppose you could say, in a way, you guys called their bluff.
Yeah, I guess what happened is President Trump had a strong belief. A lot of people disagreed with him, and then he acted on it because elections have consequences, and now here we are, on our way to the golden age.
Well, and it's incredible to see, and we've had members of Treasury on as well, talking about how we're seeing this blue-collar job boom, how we're seeing the CapEx numbers up. So that's when capital expenditures are going to be going in. So people reinvesting in their businesses, people reinvesting in the United States. All of this is incredible. Got to ask you though, all of this new, just in the last 12 hours, really, the Fed governor putting pressure on Powell to slash rates. People would say, okay, when is it being cut? When is it being cut, et cetera, et cetera. Tell our viewers, right? If, let's say, you're someone who isn't involved in this, but you're a day-to-day person, what will lower interest rates mean for the average family?
Right. Well, if interest rates are lower, then that means that it'll be cheaper to buy a house, cheaper to buy a car, cheaper to buy anything that you would buy on layaway, like a new washing machine. And it'll also reduce your credit card bills and have basically just have more money in your pocket.
So the idea, and this is something, by the way, because I don't know if you've heard about this, but Gen Z, Charlie Kirk is a good friend, kind of put me onto this, and a lot of Gen Z guys are now doing this. They're buying everything on credit. You mentioned a couple appliances. They're paying bills on credit. They're using these short-term loan options through apps to go on credit. I mean, things like DoorDash and things like Uber Eats and all of it, rent in some cases, these are going on credit. And so you're really seeing this entire generation that's digging themselves deeper into credit. And I don't know if they're thinking about it in a way that, money doesn't have to be like this. Money can be a way where you actually have productivity, where the money that you're taking in will go up, not just the money that you're borrowing.
Yeah, you got to watch out and not get too extended with your debt. But I think a lot of the things you're talking about are really the revolution in sort of digital finance, and that's something that's been a real positive, and especially for younger folks.
Well, no, it certainly is interesting, and there are times where I wish that I could have bought some stuff that way, when I was younger. But at the same time, you do worry though that there are people that, as you say, get caught up a little bit too much. They get over their skis in debt and they push out. So, what is the administration when they're looking at, and you see folks like, in certain areas like New York City, people turning towards a Mamdani, people saying that, oh, my rent is too high, my rent is crazy, this price, that price, they're out of there. How is the administration looking at those types of people?
Right. Well, I mean, socialism is a really bad idea, and when a government becomes socialist, then you end up with shortages. And so what would probably happen if you really did start having government grocery stores is they'd all be empty, because people would just go in and take everything out, and then the government will run out of money. And this is how the Soviet Union worked, and this is how New York City is going to work too if he is elected.
And and you can see the pressure is building, but at the same time, these policies have been tried so many times, and every single time it's failed. And in fact, that failure has led to knock-on effects that have been 10 times even worse. Just 1 minute left. Give your final message for our viewers and tell them where they can follow you.
Right. Well, just follow me at the White House. I'm on the White House lawn virtually every day. And the bottom line is that as we head into Labor Day, that just remember that President Trump's policies led to a $6,500 raise for the typical American family last time. And we've doubled down on those policies with a big, beautiful bill, and are expecting that over the next few years there'll be another $10,000 raise for the typical American because of the policies that President Trump has pushed.
I love putting it that way. A $10,000 raise per family. Just Kevin, do me a favor. Don't tell my wife that. So I don't want, sweetheart. Just this episode was a fictional episode. We were, I'll make sure that when this airs, she's doing something else. Kevin Hassett, thank you so much. The director of the President's National Economic Council. Be right back.